I am Naomi Beck, 31 years old. A few days ago, my family made it clear I wasn't welcome at the Christmas Eve party. Stay home, Mom said over the phone, her tone polite but firm, like she was canceling a lunch reservation. You just make everyone feel awkward. So that's exactly what I did. I spent Christmas Eve alone in my small San Francisco apartment watching the city lights from my window while my family hosted their annual black tie gathering back in the Myers Park estate in Charlotte. Champagne flowing string quartet in the foyer, investors, and old money friends laughing under the chandeliers. I wasn't there. No one asked where I was. Then, at exactly 11:00 p.m., my phone rang. It was my younger brother, Rowan. His voice was shaking, almost breathless. Naomi, what have you done? Mom just saw the news and she can't breathe right. Everyone's freaking out. What the hell did you do? The news he was talking about. My company, Apex Finance, had just gone public with a valuation of $1.8 billion, making me one of the youngest female fintech founders to hit that mark. But the real shock wasn't the money. It was the Bloomberg interview that dropped at the exact same moment, laying out years of emails, patents, and recordings that proved Rowan had tried to claim my work as part of the family bank. I stayed quiet on the phone, listening to the chaos in the background, glasses clinking, voices rising, someone yelling for Dad. Rowan kept repeating, "This is going to destroy everything." I finally said, calm as I could, "No, Rowan. You don't get to decide that anymore." Before I tell you what happened that night and how we got here, if this story already has you hooked, please hit like and subscribe. It really helps me reach more people who need to hear this, and, if you're watching right now, drop a comment telling me where you're from and what time it is there. I read every single one. Let me take you back to how this all started 3 years ago when my family's legacy bank was facing its toughest challenge yet, and I made the mistake of trying to help. A few years ago, this all started when I realized that in my family, charm and tradition were worth a lot more than actual talent. The Becks have been bankers in Charlotte for 3 generations. Our family founded Beck Regional Banking Group back in the 60s, growing it into one of the biggest private banks, serving wealthy clients across the Carolinas. We lived in a big estate in Myers Park, the kind of house with columns out front and a circular driveway where valets parked cars during parties. Everyone knew the Beck name meant old money board seats and invitations to the right events. Rowan, my younger brother, fit that world perfectly. He was the one they all bet on from the day he was born. Charismatic, athletic, always knew exactly what to say to make partners or donors smile. By his early 20s, he was already shadowing Dad at the bank, wearing tailored suits, playing golf with executives twice his age, and closing deals over steak dinners. Mom and Dad talked about him like he was the future of the bank, the one who would take it into the next era. I was different. I liked numbers, code, and figuring out how technology could make finance smarter and fairer. I went to UNC for undergrad, then got a master's in computational finance because I saw how AI could predict risk better than any human analyst. My parents smiled for the photos when I graduated, but I overheard Mom telling a friend at the reception that it was just a phase and that I'd eventually come around to something more suitable. Blair, my middle sister, never rocked the boat. She worked in marketing for a local luxury brand, showed up to every family event looking perfect, and stayed quiet whenever tensions rose. She didn't challenge anything, didn't defend anyone. She just observed and went along. Family dinners at the estate were always the same. Long mahogany table staff serving courses, conversation revolving around the bank's quarterly numbers or which client had just moved more assets over. Dad would update everyone on new regulations or expansion plans, then turn to Rowan and ask his opinion like it actually mattered. Rowan always had a smooth answer ready, something about client relationships or modernizing branches, just enough to keep the old clients happy. When they asked me what I was working on, I tried explaining once early on. I talked about building algorithms that could spot credit risk patterns faster and more accurately, especially for sustainable investments that traditional models overlooked. Dad nodded politely. Mom changed the subject to the upcoming charity gala. Rowan smirked and said something about how tech was interesting, but banking was about people, not computers. After that, I learned to keep quiet at the table. I'd push food around my plate while they discussed Rowan's latest presentation to the board or how he'd just landed a big family office account. Mom would beam and say things like, "Rowan's a natural. He makes everyone feel so comfortable." Then she'd glance at me and add Naomi's very bright in her own way, of course. Blair would just sip her wine and look down. She never jumped in to back me up, never called out the difference in how they treated us. She'd text me later sometimes, little things like, "Dinner was intense tonight, but nothing more." Staying neutral kept her in the good graces of everyone. I moved out after grad school, took a small apartment in Charlotte at first, then later out to San Francisco when my startup idea started gaining traction. Rowan got the renovated guest house on the estate for weekends and a luxury condo downtown paid for by the family trust. The gap only grew from there. At holidays and big gatherings, the pattern repeated. Thanksgiving, Easter, the annual summer party at the estate. Rowan was front and center, shaking hands, telling stories that made everyone laugh. I'd stand on the edges trying small talk when cornered, but I never quite clicked the way he did. Mom would pull me aside afterward and say I seemed distant, that I should try harder to connect, that people found my intensity off-putting. Dad rarely said much, just went along with whatever Mom decided about seating charts or guest lists. He'd pat my shoulder sometimes and tell me he was proud, but it always felt like an afterthought compared to how he talked about Rowan's potential. By the time I was 28, I'd accepted that in their eyes, Rowan was the one carrying the family forward. Blair was the easy, agreeable daughter. And I was the awkward one who didn't quite belong no matter how hard I worked or what I built on my own. That acceptance changed the summer the bank hit real trouble for the first time in decades. One summer when the company was struggling with new online competitors eating into our client base, Mom called me out of the blue. "Naomi, we need to talk about Rowan." She said, her voice carrying that familiar edge that meant this wasn't optional. "The bank is going through a rough patch. Deposits are down, younger clients are moving to digital platforms, and the board is pressing for innovation. Rowan is under a lot of pressure. As family, you should help." I was in my San Francisco apartment by then, working full-time on my own project with two co-founders I'd met during my master's program. We'd built a platform that used AI to assess credit risk in real-time, spot fraud patterns traditional models missed, and prioritize sustainable investments that older banks ignored. We called it Apex Finance. Early tests with a few credit unions showed huge potential for cutting losses and opening new markets. I told Mom I was deep into development, that timing was critical for our seed round. She brushed it off. "Development, Naomi. This is a hobby compared to a 60-year legacy. Rowan needs real support, not some side project. You have an obligation to the family name." The word obligation hit hard. I'd heard it before, but this time it felt different. I knew if I shared anything without protection, it could disappear into the bank's pipeline with Rowan getting the credit. Before I even considered saying yes, I contacted Michael Donovan, an IP lawyer recommended by a professor contact. We met at a quiet cafe near my office. He explained the risks clearly. If you consult and they claim your work falls under family business discussions, they'll argue it's not fully yours. File the patent now, timestamp everything. I did exactly that. In June, I submitted the core patent for the risk prediction algorithm under my name and the startup's. Every major component, the unique way it weighted environmental and governance factors in lending decisions, all documented and legally protected. Only then did I agree to help limited scope. I flew back to Charlotte for a weekend, met Rowan at the bank's headquarters downtown, a sleek building with the Beck name in steel letters across the lobby. He greeted me with a big hug and that easy grin everyone fell for. Sis, you're a lifesaver. This means the world. His office overlooked uptown awards on the walls, photos of him with local politicians. I walked him through high-level concepts how AI could modernize risk assessment without replacing personal relationship managers, how it could attract millennial clients who cared about green portfolios. I held back the proprietary details, the threaded neural architecture that made it faster and more accurate. Rowan scribbled notes, nodding like it all made perfect sense. This is gold, he said. Investors will eat it up. We can position the bank as forward-thinking but still trusted. Mom called that evening while I was packing to leave. Thank you for coming through. Rowan's already excited. See, family pulls together. I didn't feel pulled together. I felt cautious, but I told myself it was just consulting, nothing more. A couple weeks later, Rowan texted about a big investor meeting in Raleigh. Need you there for the tech side. I flew in again, sat in the back of a conference room while he presented slides I'd never seen. Phrases I'd used in our talk appeared on screen: real-time risk threading, sustainable lending edge. An investor asked who developed the core tech. Rowan smiled. Our team's been working on it internally with input from experts. He glanced my way. My sister Naomi's been advising on the algorithms. Advising. Like I was a consultant, not the one who built it from scratch. Afterward, he handed me an NDA. Standard stuff to protect the bank's interests. You get it right. We're all on the same side. I read it carefully with Michael over email first. It covered information shared during consulting, but thanks to the prior patent, my independent work stayed mine. I signed. Mom hosted dinner that night at the estate to celebrate the positive feedback from investors. Rowan dominated the conversation, recounting how the pitch landed. Dad raised a glass to Rowan's vision for the future. Blair smiled and nodded along. When someone asked me about the tech details, I started to explain the patent timeline. Mom cut in smoothly. Naomi's been so helpful with her input. We're lucky to have her expertise in the family. Rowan shot me a quick look, part gratitude, part warning. I flew back to San Francisco the next morning, uneasy, but telling myself I'd protected what mattered. Things started shifting not long after that. After that, things escalated quickly as Rowan started using more of my concepts in his presentations without asking. He invited me to another investor meeting a few months later, this one with a major pension fund in Atlanta. I flew in expecting to clarify technical points if needed. Instead, I watched from the side while Rowan clicked through a full deck titled Beck Regional Banking Next Generation Risk Intelligence. Slides showed diagrams of the threaded architecture, the exact weighting system for sustainable factors, even screenshots of sample outputs that looked identical to our internal tests at Apex. He spoke confidently about how the bank had developed this in-house to stay competitive. One of the fund managers leaned forward. Impressive. Who led the development team on this? Rowan didn't hesitate. I've been driving the initiative personally with support from our innovation group. He nodded toward me. My sister Naomi provided some early feedback on the models. Early feedback. Like I'd offered casual suggestions instead of building the foundation. My stomach tightened, but I stayed quiet during the Q&A. Afterward, in the hallway, I pulled him aside. Rowan, those slides go way beyond what I shared. That's my proprietary framework. He looked surprised, then flashed that disarming smile. Come on, Naomi, we're family. You consulted, you signed the NDA. This is for the bank's survival. Investors loved it. I reminded him the NDA only covered what I disclosed during consulting, not my independent work. He waved it off. It's all intertwined now. Let's not make this complicated. Mom got involved that same weekend. She arranged a family dinner at the estate to debrief the successful pitch. The table was set formally. Guests included 2 board members and their spouses. Conversation flowed around Rowan's triumph, how the pension fund was seriously considering a big commitment. When a board member turned to me and asked about my role in the tech, I started to explain the original research timeline. Mom interrupted smoothly. Naomi's been wonderful lending her knowledge, but she's always been more independent. Rowan's the one turning ideas into reality for the bank. Dad chuckled along. Exactly. He's got the vision to lead. Blair sat across from me, picking at her salad. She met my eyes for a second when Mom spoke, then looked away and changed the subject to some local event. No support, no question, just silence. The guest beside me, a partner's wife, patted my hand. You must be proud of your brother. I forced a smile and nodded. Inside, the dismissal stung like a slap. Later in the kitchen, while clearing coffee cups, Mom cornered me. Naomi, you seemed tense tonight. Could you try to be more enthusiastic? Rowan's under enough stress without family friction? I told her the presentation crossed lines. She sighed. It's business. Everything you've done benefits the family legacy. Don't be difficult. Rowan joined us, then loosening his tie. Seriously, sis, relax. We're on the same team. Blair walked past, carrying plates, heard the exchange, and kept going without a word. I left early the next morning. On the flight back, I emailed Michael Donovan everything, the slides Rowan used, timestamps from our consulting sessions, confirmation that core elements predated any bank involvement. He replied fast. You're covered by the patent and limited scope of disclosure, but document every future interaction. They're testing boundaries. Over the following year, the pattern continued. Rowan scheduled more pitches, sometimes inviting me, sometimes not. When I attended, my role shrank further, mentioned only in passing as technical advisor. When I skipped, he'd text thanks for letting us run with it. Mom kept hosting celebratory dinners after each win. I went to a couple, sat through toasts to Rowan's leadership, watched Blair nod and smile at all the right moments. Each time someone asked about my own work, the subject shifted quickly back to the bank. At one holiday gathering, a longtime client asked me directly about Apex. I described our progress, the partnerships we were closing. Mom laughed lightly. Naomi's little startup is cute, but nothing compares to real banking. Rowan raised his glass. She's exploring her interests. We're all proud. Blair finally spoke up then, her tone sweet. It's good she has a hobby to keep busy. The table laughed politely. I excused myself before dessert. That night drove it home. The dismissal wasn't accidental anymore. By early the next year, Rowan called me into his office for what he termed an urgent strategy session. Over the next months, the invitations just stopped coming, starting with small things that added up fast. First, the usual group texts about Sunday brunch at the estate dried up. Then Rowan's birthday barbecue photos showed up on social media, with Blair tagging everyone except me. I saw Dad in a few shots, arm around Rowan, big smiles all around. I called Dad once to ask what was going on. He sounded tired. Things are tense at the bank, Naomi. Rowan's carrying a heavy load. Maybe give it some space. Space from what I hadn't caused any scenes. But I got the message. Blair sent a couple casual messages around that time. Nothing deep. Heard you're busy with work. No invitation to catch up, no question about why I wasn't in the family photos anymore. The real push came in early December when Mom called about the annual Christmas Eve party. She didn't greet me warmly like usual. Naomi, I need to be direct. This year's gathering is important, lots of key clients and board members. Rowan's bringing potential partners. We need the atmosphere positive. I waited. She continued. You've been distant, and honestly, you make people feel awkward. It's better if you sit this one out. I asked if that meant I wasn't invited. I'm suggesting you don't come. For everyone's sake. You never enjoy these events anyway. I told her I hadn't been to one in months because no one asked. She sighed. Take the out gracefully, Naomi. I hung up and stared at my phone. Erased just like that from the biggest family event of the year. That call lit something in me. I opened my laptop and saw an email from Bloomberg, waiting subject line about featuring Apex Finance ahead of our planned IPO. They wanted to cover the journey of a female founder in fintech, especially with the sustainable angle gaining traction. I replied yes, and added that I had a personal story they might find relevant. Over the following weeks, I worked with the journalist remotely. She spent time verifying everything independently. I shared patent filings time-stamped years earlier email chains where Rowan first asked for help, then demanded full access during that urgent office meeting, the recording I'd made when he and Mom pressured me to hand over the platform. Michael Donovan reviewed every document. The NDA only binds what you disclosed in consulting sessions. Your core IP is protected. You're clear. I also met virtually with Dr. Sarah Klein, my old graduate advisor from UNC, who'd followed Apex from the beginning. Sharp, no-nonsense award-winning in financial modeling. She reviewed the original research notes. This is undeniably your work, Naomi. I watched you develop the architecture from thesis stage. I'll go on record confirming the timeline and originality. The journalist pushed for details on fallout. I told her about the slow exclusion, the direct uninvite to Christmas. She noted it all. We scheduled the article to publish at exactly 11 p.m. on Christmas Eve, synced with the IPO announcement. Markets would be quiet, but news feeds wouldn't. The timing wasn't random. It was the moment they'd all be together celebrating without me. My co-founders questioned the personal angle at first. This could get messy. I explained I wasn't looking for mess. I wanted credit where it was due and protection for what I'd built. Investors on Sand Hill Road reviewed the plan. One partner asked why tie the IPO to family drama. I said the public deserved the full context of ownership, especially when attempts were made to challenge it. They agreed. If your evidence is this solid, we'll support the structure. I kept documenting everything. Saved Mom's voicemail about the party. Screenshot Blair's latest story from the estate decorations family only. Forwarded Rowan's occasional texts, checking if I'd reconsidered sharing more resources for the bank. Michael warned me fallout would be rough. They'll claim it's private family business. I knew, but silence hadn't protected me. Truth might. By mid-December, the article was locked. Bloomberg verified patents through public records emails through metadata, the recording's legality in a one-party consent state. Dr. Klein's statement. I read the draft one last time. Headline focused on the billion-dollar valuation and the betrayal behind it. Screenshots, timelines, quotes from experts. Undeniable. I sat back and looked at my calendar. Christmas Eve marked empty except for a quiet dinner with local friends who'd become my real support. 3 days before the party, Mom called again to confirm I understood. It's a professional event this year. Don't show up and create tension. I told her not to worry. I wouldn't be there. She sounded relieved. Good. We'll talk after the holidays. I didn't reply. That Christmas Eve, I stayed in my apartment ready for what came next. That Christmas Eve, I sat alone in my apartment with my laptop open and my phone nearby. I hadn't planned to watch, but curiosity won. I pulled up Rowan's stories first. The estate looked perfect, lights strung along the columns, guests arriving in tuxedos and gowns, valets taking cars. Mom appeared in a black dress greeting people at the door with that polished smile. Dad shook hands beside her. Blair posed in a group photo with cousins I hadn't seen in years. Rowan posted a video clip of the foyer string quartet playing champagne flutes everywhere. Caption grateful for family and friends tonight. No one seemed to notice an empty spot. I refreshed a few times, seeing more stories from Blair Toast's laughter. They looked happy. The distance struck deeper than ever. My inbox had the final go-ahead from Bloomberg earlier that day. The article was staged to go live at 11 sharp, right alongside the IPO announcement. I'd refreshed the page once already. Still quiet. At 10:50, I made tea and sat back on the couch. The city outside was calm, occasional fireworks from early celebrators. I kept my phone on silent but face up. 11 o'clock hit. I refreshed. The headline loaded: Apex Finance IPO at 1.8 billion valuation. Founder reveals attempted IP theft by family bank executive. My photo stared back professional headshot. Below it, the full piece with timelines, email, screenshots the transcribed recording from Rowan's office demand Dr. Klein's quote confirming independent development, Michael's legal breakdown of the NDA limits. Tech sites picked it up fast. Notifications started rolling in from colleagues, old classmates, journalists I didn't know. At exactly 11:01, my phone vibrated hard. Rowan calling. I let it ring twice, then answered. Naomi. His voice shook background noise, loud music cutting off suddenly, people talking over each other. What have you done? Mom just saw the news on her phone and she can't breathe right. Dad's trying to calm her. Everyone's staring. I stayed quiet. He kept going. You put private emails out there. The recording. Investors are texting me already. This is defamation. You signed an NDA. I spoke evenly. The NDA doesn't cover my independent work. You know that. That's not how it works. You consulted. You can't just blast family business to the world on Christmas Eve. In the background, Mom's voice rose sharp. Is that her? Give me the phone? Rowan hesitated. You've ruined everything. The board will freak. Clients will pull out. I said. You tried to take what I built. I protected it. He laughed bitter. Protected. You timed this for tonight. You wanted maximum damage. Mom grabbed the phone then. Naomi. Her tone ice cold. How could you? On Christmas Eve you've humiliated us. Board members are here. Partners. They're all reading it now. I heard someone ask what was wrong. Dad's low voice trying to hush things. She continued. Rowan's career. The bank's reputation. You destroyed it for attention. No, Mom. I told the truth so it couldn't be taken. You violated family loyalty. We will sue. We'll fight this. Michael had prepped me. Go ahead. Every document becomes public record then. More people see the evidence. Silence for a beat. Then you're tearing us apart. You did that when you told me not to come tonight. She hung up without another word. My phone lit up again almost immediately. Texts from unknown numbers, journalists asking for comment. Then one from Blair. How could you do this to us on Christmas? You're selfish and cruel. Everyone here is mortified because of you. Don't ever call yourself part of this family again. I read it twice. No question, no attempt to understand. Just blame. Another text from her minutes later. Rowan doesn't deserve this. You always wanted to make him look bad. I didn't reply. More stories stopped posting from the estate. The party noise in Rowan's call had turned chaotic, raised voices, someone crying. I opened Twitter. Apex was trending regionally already. Comments poured in, some supportive, some calling it dirty laundry. A local business reporter posted about potential fallout for Beck Regional. My co-founders texted congratulations mixed with heads up about incoming press. Dr. Klein sent a simple proud of you, stay strong. Michael emailed expected pushback. Don't respond without me. You're solid. I sat there as notifications kept coming, the apartment quiet around me. The contrast hit hard, them in their lit-up mansion falling apart, me alone, but finally seen by thousands who got it. Rowan called back once more, but I let it go to voicemail. Mom didn't try again. Blair posted a vague story later, black screen with white text, family, first always. Several mutual contacts liked it fast. By midnight, major finance sites had picked up the story. Comment sections filled with debates about women in tech, family betrayal, IP protection. I closed my laptop around 1 a.m., hands steady for the first time in years. The days after brought the real storm. In the weeks that followed, everything unraveled for them in ways they couldn't hide. Major clients started pulling accounts. One large regional credit union terminated their partnership the day after Christmas, citing concerns over leadership ethics. A pension fund followed, moving assets worth hundreds of millions elsewhere. Press releases were polite but clear: trust matters in banking. The stock took a sharp hit, dropping over 20% in the first week of trading. Analysts pointed to the scandal as the trigger warning of further erosion if confidence wasn't restored. The board moved fast. They suspended Rowan pending an independent review, then made it permanent. Reports said he was removed from all roles, no severance package beyond standard. Local business pages ran the story for days. Blair went public on social media. She posted a long statement about loyalty, how painful it was to see family aired out for personal gain, how actions have consequences. She never named me directly, but everyone knew. Comments piled up, agreeing with her, calling the timing cruel, saying blood should stay thicker than ambition. Mom and Dad stayed silent publicly. No statements, no interviews. Friends of the family told reporters they were devastated, focusing on damage control. I got a few indirect messages through mutual contacts. One asked if I'd consider clarifying that it was misunderstanding. Another suggested a family meeting to smooth things over. I ignored them. Blair tried once more, a direct email. You've made your point. The bank is suffering. Employees are scared for their jobs. Think about someone other than yourself for once. I read it, felt the pull for a second, innocent staff caught in the middle, then remembered why I'd gone public in the first place. I didn't reply. Michael kept me updated on legal fronts. The bank's lawyers reached out with threats of suits for defamation and NDA breach. He sent back the full evidence packet. They went quiet after that. Media requests flooded in. I did a couple controlled interviews sticking to facts. The patent timeline, independent development, why documentation matters for founders, especially women facing pressure to share credit. Support poured in from strangers. Women in finance messaged about similar experiences, bosses taking ideas, families dismissing work as hobbies. Some said reading the story gave them courage to protect their own projects. Apex grew fast. New partnerships with sustainable funds signed on, valuation climbed higher. My team expanded, office space upgraded. We focused on the mission: smarter, fairer lending through technology. I blocked the family numbers one by one. Rowan's first, then Blair's, mom's, dad's. No dramatic announcement, just done. No one from home ever apologized. Not a single call or message taking responsibility. That silence said everything. By spring, I'd settled fully into West Coast life. Longer days at the office, weekends hiking with coworkers who became real friends, no looking back at Charlotte social circles. I spoke at a Fintech conference in the fall. Standing on stage, I talked about building under pressure, documenting every step, choosing integrity over forced loyalty. The audience gave a standing ovation. Afterward, a young founder approached. My family wants me to join their business instead of my startup. Your story helped me decide to stay independent. That moment stuck with me. Looking back now from a place that finally feels like home, I know I didn't lose a family that night. I freed myself from one that never truly saw me. The lesson isn't complicated. Protect your work early. Trust evidence over promises. Surround yourself with people who value what you build, not what you can give them. Success on your own terms is possible. It's quieter sometimes, lonelier at first, but it's real. And no one can take that away.